This is Gemara and Eruvin Daf Lamed Ches. Of course, we're learning from Chedishel, sponsored as Chus for Shem Shem Tev Esther, as well as Chus in Lishmas of Esther Basar Meir. Of course, we're Lachelim and Yehuda Ben Yakir, Men Ben Vecham, Ramchan Ita, Chaim Ben Ser, Shalom Ben Rezil, Sarvas Kanendel, Basim as Chaysar, Yischaim Sarasi, Yisrael Ben Mindel, is the person of Shalea, Shalmei Bastam Ben Shavego and Shir Chara, Faldav Ben Iteriva, Daniel Ben Chana Rezil. We pick it up on the bottom of Lamed Zayin and Beis. We're in the middle of this discussion about Breira, about this retroactive clarification, whether we say that you're allowed to say Breira, we do not say Breira. We just concluded with the statement of Rav Yosef that when you hold of Breira, you hold of it. You don't hold of it, you don't hold of it. Rav Yosef taught us, I don't care Daraisa, I don't care Darabanan. Don't make that differentiation. Says Rav Yosef, we go all the way. Comes like Rava, we're about 10 lines from the bottom of Lamed Zayin and Beis. Comes like Rava, and Rava says, Shani Hasam Debinin Rashis. There's a different reason in the case of the wine. Let's remind yourselves, you bought wine from the Kutin, and we had a machlokes over there, whether we said Breira, or whether you're allowed to say, that which I will separate is going to be Truma, that's what I will separate will be Meiser. Comes like Rava, and Rava says, no, it's not because of Breira. The machlokes over there is for a different reason. Says Rava Amar Shani Hasam, that it has to be considered rashis, has to be considered the first of the fruits. Sheshirel nikarim, it has to be nicker. We learn out from the pasuk that it has to be nicker, it has to be recognizable, and that is the reason why it doesn't work. Not because necessarily we hold the breira, you don't hold the breira. According to all the opinions that said it doesn't work, the reason is because it has to be recognizable when you separate the chumas, the meisers, etc. Amalei Abayi comes like Abayi, and Abayi says, 1 second. If what you're saying is true, that any time you have chuma, meiser, those type of things, it has to be nicker, it has to be recognizable. Says Abayi, let me add to that what you learn. You have 2 pomegranates of tevel, and he said as follows: if the rain comes down today, Yezed Shuma, Alzeh, you want this one to be Shuma for that pomegranate. Of course, let's remind ourselves, Shuma Gedela does not have to be a full pomegranate. Shuma Gedela is a 40th, the 50th, the 60th, but you're allowed to give as much as you want. So this person said, I have 2 pomegranates, I have to separate the appropriate Shumas and Maisris. So he said, if the rain comes on this one, then this one should be Shuma. If the rain doesn't come today, Yezed Shuma Alzeh, then this one should be Truma for that one. Says the Gemara, Hachanami ben Yardu. Asks Abaya, Hachanami, is it true ben Yardu ben lo Yardu dein dvarim klum? Are you going to tell me that whether it rains or doesn't rain, it doesn't work because it's not nicker, it's not recognizable, according to the idea that you, Rava, just taught us, that it all has to do with not breira, not about the regular machlekes, whether we say retroactive clarification, whether we hold the breira or not, but rather a different idea, whether we say that it has to be nicker, it has to be recognizable. So says Abayi over here, is ever going to hold, it's not going to work. Maybe you'll say, yeah, Hachanami, you're right, it's not going to work because it's not recognizable. Vatanami learned in the Mishnah, Chumas Hakri Hazeh Umaytreisav Bisaychai. If someone says the Truma of this pile, Umaytreisav Bisaychai, and the Meiser of that which is inside of it, Uchumas Meiser Zeh Bisaychai, and this Chumas Meiser should be inside of it. 1 second, our page has not letting me show the end of it. There it is. Rav Shimon Aimer comes along Rav Shimon and he says the first wide line, Lam Zayin and Beis, all the way down to the Amid. Rav Shimon Aimer, Kara Hashem, it works. Why does it work? If what you're telling me is that it has to be recognizable, why over here when he said Maitzreis of Bisaycha, he said whichever is inside should be Maiser, why does it work? So answers the Gemara, Shaini Asam. No, you know why it doesn't work? No, why yes works in this last case that we said about Truma Zakri, the Truma of the pile, Shaini Asam Dika Svivav. Because it's that which is surrounded, which is nicker, which is recognizable. You have the items around, you have a pile, and you said that which is Bisaycha in the center. And you have it which just surrounds it. So it is nicker. Viva same another reason, Kidzani Timer, like we learned. Amr Led Rameir, they told Rameir, a totally new answer. Says Rameir, you know the reason why in the case of the Alokech Min Akutim. Another reason why it's not going to work. Another terror says Rava. The reason why it's not going to work when you buy the wine from the Kuzdim is because are you not going to admit to me Shema Yivaka Anud? Maybe the barrel is going to break. V'nimsa, and it's going to come out as a shaysim tevel mafreya that you drain tevel limafreya. What's going on over here? What's going on over here is as follows. We have this case of the wine, and the person is coming, the person saying, the 2 lugim that I'm going to separate is going to be chuma, the 10 is going to be meiser, the 9 is going to be meiser sheni. Comes along Rameir says, 1 second, I'm sorry, the Chachamim said to Rameir, you Rameir said that works. 1 second, what happens if the bottle of wine breaks? You have this big barrel, if the barrel breaks, all the wine is lost. what happens in that case? Then of course you're not going to be able to separate it. And then what's going to happen? You drank Tevel Lemafreya. Because what happened over here? You went and you drank the wine. You drank the wine and you said that which I'm going to separate is going to be this, that which I'm going to separate is going to be that. But then you didn't get to separate it because all the wine is lost. So say the Chacham to Rameir, how in the world are you allowed that to happen? So that's another reason why we shouldn't allow you to separate it, pre-separate it, or separate early, meaning drink early without separation, even if you don't say the rules of Breira. Amar Lahan, Rameir responds, I'm not worried about that. When it breaks, we'll worry about it, but it's not a concern that you have to necessarily take into consideration. Says the Gemara. That which we started off today and said, mean Reisha Sheshira Nikarim, that has to be nikr, has to be recognizable when you separate the Chumais and Maestris, Micah Amarle. What was this conversation? What's this conversation? When the barrel breaks, when the barrel doesn't break, it has nothing to do with that. You Rava, what was your teretz? Your teretz was, it has to be nikr, it has to be recognizable. That's not what's going on over here. Seemingly the conversation over here was a totally different conversation. Says the Gemara, Lidi Don. This is what the Chachamim are telling Rameir. Lidi Don, according to us, being a Reisha Sheshirani current. We hold that either way it doesn't work. Because it has to be nikr. Lidi Doch, according to you Rameir that are going to disagree with me. And you Rameir are going to say it's still going to work. Iyatamaida, do you not agree, Shami Yavaka Anoid, that maybe the barrel is going to break? Meaning this is like a second attack. Number one, they said, first of all, it's not nikr, it shouldn't work. Number two, and even if you're not going to agree with that problem, what about the fact that the barrel might break and if you'll never get a chance to separate the probably Chumas and Maestris, and on that, Rameir responded, and again, that's the end of this additional taret, how to learn up this Mishnah of Akutim, irrespective of the rules of Breira. Says the Gemara, moving along to the Mishnah of Lamed Chesam and Aleph, again discussing back into Erev Techumim. Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Yontav Asamach LeShabbos. You have Yontav and Shabbos like this year. This year you have Shabbos, then Yontav by Rosh Hashanah and Sukkot. But you have Yontav that is Samach LeShabbos. Pain Milf now being Lachreo. Oh, literally like this year. Then you have Yontav after Shabbos. Ma'ariv Adam Shnei Eruvin. What do? You make two Erev Techumim. Again, each day needs its own, seemingly, says Rabbi Eliezer. V'aymer, and he says, Eruvin Berishain, LeMizrach, LeMe'iriv, on the first day should be LeMizrach to the east, B'shein LeMe'iriv, the second day to the west. Barisha LeMe'iriv, the first day to the west, B'shein LeMizrach, on the second day to the east. Eruvin Berishain, the first day, I'm going to make an Erev, Ubesheni, and the second day, Kivnei Iri, I don't want to make an Erev, I want to keep my area in the town. Eruvi Besheni, or I want to make an Erev on the second day, Uberisha Kivnei Iri, and the first day I want to be like my city. That is what Rabbi Eliezer says. Rabbi Eliezer seemingly is going with the opinion that each day is a separate entity, and therefore comes along Rabbi Eliezer, and Rabbi Eliezer says each day we view separately. You want to make an Erev on one day east, the other day west, great. You want to make an Erev on one day, the other day not, great. Rabbi Eliezer seemingly is of the opinion that this is what the Gemara is going to discuss, that Yom Tov and Shabbos, two separate days, two separate Kedushas, two separate entities, we view each one separately. The Chachamim, they say no. Either you can make an Erev on one direction, or you're not allowed to make an Erev at all. Or you can make an Erev for 2 days, or you can't make an Erev at all. Okay, and seemingly the Chachamim are arguing with Rabbi Eliezer, and we'll have to see in the Gemara exactly what is the machlekes. So what should the Chachamim do? Hopefully it should sound familiar. We recorded this a few days ago. The first day you go out to the edge of the city, and you stay there during Bein Hashmashais with your loaf of bread, and you come back home. B'Sheni, on the second day, you go back out to the edge of the city, and you stay there during Bein Hashmashais, you eat it there, then you bring it back while you're eating it there because you can't carry it in Shabbos, and then you bring it home, it comes out that you have a mishtaker that you gained with going and you gained in your Erev. And that's how, according to the Chachamim, you could potentially have an Erev on both days. Nechol Barishain, what happens if the Erev is eaten on the first day, consumed on day number one? Erev L'Rishain, you have an Erev on day number one, assuming it's consumed after nightfall, Vein Erev L'Sheni, but you don't have an Erev for the second day. Why not? Because the Erev was consumed. Amar Rabbi Lazar, Moidim Atem Li, or Amar Lahem Rabbi Lazar, Moidim Atem Li, Shein Shnei Kedushais, do not admit to me there are going to be two Kedushais. And we're going to see in the Gemara exactly what is this conversation going on over here between Rabbi Eliezer and the Chacham. And before we start the Gemara, let's just see the last Rashi over here. Rashi says, Moidim Atem Li, Shein Shnei Kedushais, the Ka'amritu. Ein Erev L'Sheni. Lei said there's no Erev on the second day. The kedusha achas, if it's going to be one kedusha, meaning if Yontav Shabbos is viewed as one entity, it's like one long day. And it shall work for both days. So why did the Chachamim seemingly say you don't have an ear for the second day? We gave the Sheikh Kedusha saying, and that's what Rabbi Eliezer is saying. You could do it either way. And again, let's see the Gemara, and this will become clear. So what's certainly clear is that Rabbi Eliezer is holding that you're allowed to make an ear for each day independently. Says the Gemara, L'ruach achas amay nihu. What does it mean to one direction l'shnei yamim? Again, what was the statement of the Chacham? The Chachamim statement was quite repetitive. Let's scroll back up over here. What do the Chachamim say? Let's highlight these words. Chacham oimrim, oy ma'ariv l'ruach achas, oy ein ma'ariv kol iker. Oy ma'ariv l'shnei yamim, oy ein ma'ariv kol iker. That's very repetitive. So says the Gemara, L'ruach achas ma'niu. What does it mean, according to Chachamim, that you can make an Erev in one direction, l'shnei yamim? It means for both days. You can make one Erev for both days. But then the Chachamim continued and they said, l'shnei yamim. What does it mean, l'shnei yamim ma'niu? What do the Chachamim mean? They say you can make it for 2 days. L'ruach achas. So it's the exact same case. So what are the Chachamim doing? Seemingly repeating themselves, saying that both days, you only got to make it one direction. Says the Gemara, this is where the Rabbanan are responding to Rabbi Eliezer. Again, Rabbi Eliezer began the Mishnah and said, each day of Yantiv is a separate entity. You can make an Erev on day 1 in one direction, on day 2 in another direction, or you can make an Erev one day and the second day not make an Erev at all. The Chachamim now are responding to Rabbi Eliezer. How do the Chachamim respond? They say to Rabbi Eliezer, Iyata Maida, do you not admit she'ein ma'arvin liyoyim echad chetzi l'tzafay v'chetzi l'daroin? Say the Chachamim to Rabbi Eliezer, could you take one day and make an ear of the first half of the day in one direction, the second half of the day in another direction? Amr lehen. So the Rabbi Eliezer responds, Aval, I agree. MS. We've seen that word already. That word Aval means MS. The Rabbi Eliezer agrees, you're right, I agree with you. You can't take one day and split it in half. So now the Chachamim say, just like you admit to us that. You admit to us that you can't take one day and make half-half. So 2 and 2 days, you shouldn't be still able to do the same thing. So the Chachamim are asking Rabbi Eliezer that both days should be viewed as one big kedusha, one big entity. So how are you allowed to make an erev in each day in different direction? For Rabbi Eliezer, what does he hold? When it's one day, it's one kedusha. Rabbi Eliezer disagrees and he says, Yontav Shabbos, 2 days Yontav Shabbos, I should say, is 2 separate kedusha. See Rabbi Eliezer, you're able to do one day in one direction, another day in another direction. Amr name Rabbi Eliezer. Now we flip it around. Now Rabbi Eliezer is going to ask the Chachamim, Iyata Maidim, you Chachamim, do you not admit Shem Ir Beragla B'Yem Rishon, that if you make an ear with your feet on the first day, you go to Ezra Tchum and you stay there during Ben Hashmashais. Ma'ariv Beragla B'Yem Sheni, that you're allowed to make an ear on the second day. Mechel Eruva B'Yem Rishon, that let's say your ear is consumed on day number 1. You don't have an ear for the second day. Amru Lois, what do the Chacham respond? Yeah, that I agree to. I agree that I can make it on one day with my own feet, on day 2 with my own feet. I agree if I made it on day number 1 and the ear is consumed, they don't have an ear for day number 2. Allah, base kedusha same. So Rabbi Eliezer says, so what do you clearly see? You clearly see if the ear was consumed on day number 1, why don't you have an ear on day number 2? Because la'ayeh base kedusha, we see it's 2 separate entities. If it was one big entity, who would care if the ear was disappeared in the middle? Because they would all be called one entity, and just like it started, it will go straight to the second day. So say Rabbi Eliezer to the Chachamim, the fact that you admit to me that if you lose it on day number 1, you do not have an ear on day number 2, that proves that base kedusha same. Says the Gemara of Rabbanan, how do the Rabbanan respond to this taina? The Rabbanan are in doubt and they are confused. I shouldn't say confused, I should say in doubt. And the Rabbanan go l'chumra both ways. They go l'chumra assuming it's one day, and they go l'chumra assuming it's both days. And therefore, if it's consumed in the middle, you don't have it on day number 2, because they are machmir on both avenues. So Amru Loi, now the Chachamim respond to Rabbi Eliezer. Amru Loi to Rabbi Eliezer. Chachamim say to Rabbi Eliezer, do you, Rabbi Eliezer, not admit that you cannot make an Erev initially from Yontif to Shabbos? You, Rabbi Eliezer, you just told me what? You just told me it's 2 separate Kedushas. But yeah, do you admit that from Yontif to Shabbos you cannot make an Erev? Amr L'Hanabel. Rabbi Eliezer says, yeah, that I admit to. So the Chachamim said, Halai Kedusha Achasi. What's the reason you can't make from Yom Tov to Shabbos? Seemingly because Kedusha Achasi. It's one entity, and therefore you can't walk up in the middle and make an Erev for the second day. So Rabbi Eliezer, why are you telling me it's two different Kedushas, two different holinesses, two different days? Says the Gemara, Rabbi Eliezer, how does he respond? Hasa Misham Achana, a totally different reason, which we'll really get to at the end of today's daf, really tomorrow's daf. Rabbi Eliezer responds, that's a different problem. If it's Yontif into Shabbos, Shabbos into Yontif, you can't make it end of day one and day number two. Hachana, you're preparing from one day to the next. You're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to prepare from Yontif to Shabbos Friday, Yontif into Shabbos, or Shabbos Sunday into Yontif. You can't do that. It's nothing to do with one Kedushas, two Kedushas. Says Rabbi Eliezer, it's a different issue. Tana Rabbanan, 3 lines to the bottom, on the Chesed B'Al, finishing the Amud. If you make an Erev with day number 1 with your feet, how do you make an Erev with your feet? You go to the edge of the Chum, you stay there being Hashmashais. You do the same thing on day number 2. If the Erev is consumed on day number 1, you don't have an Erev with day number 2. It's consumed. Different Rabbi, that's what Rabbi holds. Well, now we're going to quote 2 different opinions. They're going to be very similar to Rabbi Eliezer and the Chachamim, but that's what Rabbi holds. Rabbi holds if it's consumed in day number 1, you don't have an Erev of day number 2. Very similar to the opinion of the Chachamim. Rabbi Yehuda, Eimer comes on Rabbi Yehuda and he says, moving along to Amachesim Beis, Hareza Chamar Gamal, a term that we've seen, a concept that we've seen. What does that mean? What that means is, like we said, the camel and the donkey, one you leave from the front, one you leave from the back. You got a donkey on one end, the camel on the other end, and you're stuck in the middle between the rock and the hard place. And therefore, all you can have is that middle area. Therefore, it says Rabbi Yehuda, all you're going to have is the middle area in order to have your Erev. They have a different reason. If you make an Erev with your feet on one day, what does that mean? Let's quickly swing over to the left to Rashi. What does Rashi say? Oh, says Rav Shimon Gamliel, you don't need to make an Erev on the second day. They hold it's one big Kedusha, and therefore it's one long day, and therefore, not Rav Shimon ben Gamliel, but rather Rav Shimon ben Breika tells us that Erev Raglav Rishon made an Erev on day number 1. Ein Ma'ariv Raglav B'Sheni. You do not have to make an Erev on day number 2 because they go all the way extreme that it's one big day. This is the polar opposite of the sheet of Rabbi Eliezer and the Mishnah. By Yishal ben Oishim Merich are holding that it's one big day. And even if the Erev is consumed on day number 1, I don't care. You still have to go out on day number 2 because it's one big Kedusha. Just like if your Erev is consumed Friday night, you still have to go out Shabbos morning. So too, if your Erev is consumed Friday night, you let it go out Sunday morning because Shabbos, Sunday, it's all one big entity. And that's the opinion of Rabbi Shmuel ben Oshim ben. So 3 opinions: Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shmuel ben Oshim ben. Amar Rav, halacha k'nidal k'sakenim alalu. Comes like Rav and tells us what's the psach halacha. Like these 4 zakenim alim and Rabbi Eliezer that they said over. Like the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer, that it is what? That is 2 separate kedusha, shtei kedusha, 2 holiness, 2 separate days. The Amar base kedusha saying. Veilu ein dal zakenim, who are these 4? Zakenim, who are these 4 elders? Rav Shimon Gamliel, Rav Shimon ben Shmuel, ben Rav Yechon ben Breika, Rav Elazar, Rav Shimon, Rav Yesi, Rav Yehuda Stima, and Rav Yehuda. V'ikad Yamri Chaminei Rav Eliezer, and some say one of them is Rav Elazar. Umapik Rav Yesi, Rav Yehuda Stima, and remove the last name Rav Yehuda. Put in Rav Elazar and said. And that is the end of how Rav taught us the Psak Lacha is like Rav Eliezer, Shtei Kedusha, is 2 different holinesses, 2 separate days. Says the Gemara, what's going on over here? Bar Rav Yishmael, ben Rav Shimon Gamliel, Rav Yishmael, Bar Rav Yechon, ben Breika, Imchan Shamin Lahu. We just had a moment ago in the Tabar Amid that Yishmael, ben Rav Shimon Breika, and Rav Shimon Gamliel. It's both of them. I think I corrected myself incorrectly. Shouldn't have corrected myself. It's both of them. Rishon ben Oishim and Rav Shimon Gamliel. They both hold that it's all one big kedusha. So why are you telling me that they hold like Rabbi Eliezer? It's 2 kedushas. Says the Gemara, you're right. Epach, switch it around. Yachi says the Gemara, 1 second. If you switch it around, I knew Rabbi. That's the opinion of Rabbi. So the Gemara says you're right. It is the opinion of Rabbi. The Ema, so you know you should say V'chein Rav Shimon Gamliel, Rishon ben Oishim Breika, confirming and concurring with the opinion of Rabbi. Says the Gemara, V'lachshan nami Rabbi. So why don't we also list Rabbi? Why don't we say Rabbi also says Rabbi Eliezer shtei kedushais? Rabbi Tanila v'lei savarla. Rabbi said over this memory, said over this idea like Rabbi Eliezer that it's 2 different kedushas, 2 different holinesses. However, Rabbi himself did not concur, did not hold like that. Says Gemara, 1 second. Rabbanan nami Tanila v'lei savarla. How do the Rabbanan hold it? Says Gemara, Rav Gamra Law. Rav had a tradition that the Rabbanan actually held of it. And that is the end of how we paskin all these different zkanim, mixing around the names. Who paskin like Rav Eliezer, two different kedushas. Each day is viewed separately, and the practical ramifications are tremendous. Therefore, you can make it here one day on one direction, the other day in the other direction, etc. Says the Gemara, Kinach Masheder Avuna, when Avuna was nifter, Ayel Rav Chisda Lamirma, the Rav, he came along to ask Histira, contradiction of the opinions on Rav and Rav. Is it true? Like we just quoted a moment ago, the Rav says the halacha is like Rav Eliezer. That like these dallas the Canaan that it's Amar Shtei Kedusha Zain. But we learn Shabbos Yantiv. Rav Amar Nolta Bizah Surah Bizah. Rav says Shabbos and Yantiv. An egg is born on one day, it's also on the second day. Why is it also on the second day? The halacha is on the day that the egg is born, on that day it's also, it's not allowed to put on the next day. So long you're usher, it's two separate days, two separate entities, it's going to be mutter. So if Rav held like the Dallas of Canaan, like Rav Eliezer, if Rav was of the opinion that it's Shtei Kedushas, each day is separately, so an egg is born on day number one, it should be mutter in day number two. Why is Rav telling us it's also in day number two? Amar Rabbah, a different reason. Really, Rav does hold like Rav Eliezer, Shtei Kedushas. You know why the egg is forbidden? Amar Rabbah, a different issue. Hachana, it was prepared. Anytime something is prepared, says Rabbah, on day number one, it is forbidden on day number two. So this egg is quote unquote prepared. It's prepared by chicken. It's prepared by the god that it was laid, and therefore it is forbidden on day number two. The Tana like we learned in the rice during the week, on a Friday, you prepare for Shabbos. During the week, you prepare for Yantif. And you're not allowed to prepare from Shabbos to Yantif and Yantif to Shabbos. And if you do, that's what Rabbi is teaching us. Rabbi is teaching us that egg will be forbidden because it was prepared on Yantif for Shabbos. Tonight that we're starting to the Mishnah. What should you do? This is what we started off today, that you bring it on day number one. And you wait by the Tchum. And you bring it back home. You bring it on day number two. And you stay there and you eat it. How are you allowed to do that? Ask Abaye. You're preparing. What's going on over here? Yantiv is Friday. Shabbos is Shabbos. So we said Thursday night you go out to the Tchum. You stay there bein Hashemashais. Come back home. Friday night you go out to the Tchum. You stay there bein Hashemashais. Eat the food and come back home. How did you get out to the Tchum on Friday night? You walk there. That's called Achana. On Friday, on the first day of Yantiv, you're walking and you're going to prepare for tomorrow. How do you got to do that? Amarle Rabbah says, Rabbah, 1 second. Me savar sayvayim kind of Erev. Who told you the end of the day? Who told you that it's Friday night? Shkia, the end of day number one before day number two, that the Erev is kind. It's chilas ayim kind of Erev. Says the Rabbah, you know when the Erev is kind, and obviously everyone right now is getting very irked because we saw a day or two ago. The Gemara said the exact opposite. Don't worry, the Gemara is about to ask that question. But says Rabbah, tchilas ayim kind Erev. You know when Erev takes effect the first moment of Shabbos, says like a chavim. The Shabbos bechin al-atzma, therefore you're preparing onto itself. That when Shabbos begins, that says like a chavim, that's when the Erev is prepared and you're preparing for itself. Elameyahata says the Gemara 1 second. Like we saw the other day, Arbu Balagin. You should be able to make an Erev with the case of the lug in the case of the barrel. And there, meaning, we saw over there that someone made a case, someone made a stipulation. Right now it's chol, and then it's going to be kodesh. Right now it's holy, and then it's going to be mundane. And we said, you're not allowed to use that as an erev. Why not? Because right now it's not fit. Why is it not fit? At nighttime, it's going to take effect, and it will become something that is going to be fit. If it takes effect at the first moment of Shabbos. Says the Gemara, the same answer we said over there. Again, that hair that's a little bit difficult to split, says the Gemara. A different reason. Truth is, the erev takes effect at the first moment of Shabbos. But rather, the reason it's not going to work in that case because you have something that is edible during the day and it's not going to be edible during the day. So the Gemara tries again, it's not that which we learned. Rav Eliezer, Yantav is right next door to Shabbos. How are you allowed to make two Eruvin? How are you allowed to make two Eruvin? 1 second. You need a Suda that is fit during the day and it's not. Again, why is it not Suda fit during the day? Because you're making two different Eruvim. Seemingly one on one side of the city, the other one on the other side of the city. Now you can't get it. Why can't you get it? So let's pull up a picture, just because we haven't had pictures in a while. Sorry, let's pull up a picture one more time, and the pictures do not want to work. Okay, let's pull up a picture. We haven't done this in a while. Here we see in front of us two different pictures. We'll explain. This is the top picture is the Gemara's question that we just read. The second picture is the Gemara's answer. The top picture, you see, you have the city. And you put the ear of the first day, as you see the clear circle, 2,000 amos away. The second day, 2,000 amos in the other direction. 1 second. If you made the ear of the first day 2,000 amos away, how far are you 2,000 amos from your ear? So where are you allowed to walk from the city to the first ear? But you allowed to walk in the other direction? No, not even 1 iota. Because that's outside 2,000 amos, 2,001 amos. So ask the Gemara how that's going to work. If you have 2 days back to back, on the second day you're not able to get your Eruv. So the Gemara is going to answer, we'll read that in a moment. Says the Gemara, the case is that you have the city, and you have 2 different Eruvim within 2,000 amos of each other, meaning 1,000 amos in either side of the city. One's on one side of the city, one's on the other side of the city. You are smack in the middle, and therefore you will yes be able to travel from one end to the next. Says the Gemara, let's read that inside me Savris. Do you think that you put the Eruv at the end of 2,000 amos lekan? And that's the reason why it's yes going to work, because the Eruv is situated 1,000 amos from either side. Says the Gemara, one last question. You're allowed to make an Eruv both days. Basically, in all these cases that you're making Eruv on the first day for the second day, how are you allowed to do that? Because you're going on the first day to make it for the second day. How are you allowed to do that? Do you think you actually say anything that you go and you say, I am cutting the shviz for the next day? You just go and you just go and you sit down. You go and you sit down, and therefore we're seeing this is actually a very big rule in Achana, which we can talk about more tomorrow, that as long as you're not actually proactively saying something, it's not actually nicker, it's not recognizable to the world. All you're doing, you're just going to walk there, even though what you're doing is making an ear, the fact you don't say anything, therefore it's going to be permissible. I'll pick it up from here tomorrow, as the Gemara is going to continue and go into this idea how you're kind of shvisa, whether you have to say it, whether you don't have to say it, etc.